My neighbor trapped my cat in his garage for 2 days, then told me, "Keep your filthy animal off my property." I installed a camera. The next time he opened that garage, he found a letter and a court officer waiting. I'm 58. Been living in the same house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for over 20 years. It's not fancy, but it's quiet. I worked as a nurse before I retired early, long shifts, lots of emotional weight, but I liked helping people. Now, I live alone. Just me and Toby, my gray and white tabby. Toby's not a regular cat. He doesn't just lay around. He follows me from room to room. Comes when I call his name. Waits by the front door every morning when I check the mail. Everyone around here knows him. Some of my neighbors, Lisa across the street, Mike and Donna next door, even keep snacks for him. He's been around the block so many times he could probably draw a map. That was our routine. Peaceful. Predictable. Then Carl moved in. He bought the house 2 doors down. The previous owners were a retired couple who moved closer to their grandkids. I never had any issues with them. But the second Carl showed up, things started to change. First time I saw him, I waved from my porch. He didn't wave back. I figured maybe he was just tired from moving. So I brought over a store-bought pie the next day. It was still warm out. He opened the door just a little, stared at me through the gap, and said, "I don't need anything." Then he closed the door. No thank you. No explanation. I stood there with the pie in my hands. Awkward as hell. From then on, I kept my distance. I'm not pushy. People like him, grumpy, private, they just want to be left alone. Fine. I have enough friends in the neighborhood. But then it got worse. He started yelling at delivery drivers. Complained about kids riding bikes too close to his yard. Told Lisa's grandkids they were too loud. He called the city once because someone left their trash bin out a day too long. He made sure people knew he wasn't trying to be part of the community. Still, I kept Toby away from his property as best I could. But cats are cats. They roam. They sniff. They're curious. I'd seen Toby walking along Carl's fence line a few times, never bothering anything. Then one Thursday afternoon, Toby didn't come back. I called for him around sunset. Nothing. I shook his treat jar. Nothing. I walked up and down the street with a flashlight. Still nothing. By midnight, I was panicking. He'd never stayed out overnight without coming to check in. The next morning, I printed flyers with his picture. I knocked on doors. Everyone was helpful, concerned. They'd all seen him before. A few even offered to help me look. Then I got to Carl's house. He opened the door maybe 2 inches. I told him I was looking for my cat. He didn't even let me finish. "Keep your filthy animal off my property," he said. Then he shut the door.
No pause.
No, sorry, haven't seen him. Just cold, blunt, and done. I stood there on his front step, completely thrown off. That tone, the way he said filthy animal, it hit something in me. Like he wasn't just annoyed. Like he wanted me to know he didn't care what happened to Toby. Something didn't feel right. That night, I sat on my porch until 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing phantom meows. Kept thinking maybe Toby was out there somewhere hurt. The next morning, I passed Carl's house again on my walk. That's when I heard it.
A meow. Faint.
Muffled. Coming from inside his garage. I froze. Then I heard it again. I walked closer. The sound was definitely coming from behind the garage door. I knocked hard. No answer. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I didn't want to break in, not yet. So I called animal control and explained everything. They came with an officer. I stood there watching, stomach in knots, while they knocked and called and waited. Still no answer. So they got permission. The garage door was opened. And there he was. Toby. Filthy. Trembling. Curled up behind a stack of boxes next to a gas can. He looked up at me and let out a broken meow. I ran to him, dropped to my knees, and scooped him up. He was covered in dust and grease.
Starving.
His water bowl at home had been untouched for 2 days. Inside the garage was a tipped-over bag of dry food, the same brand I use. Half-eaten. No water. No sign he snuck in. The place was spotless otherwise. No knocked over tools. No scratch marks. Just a locked up cat and a clean floor. When Carl finally came out, maybe 20 minutes later, he barely looked at me. Maybe the thing snuck in, he said. Should have kept him inside. That was it. No, sorry. No, I didn't know. Just a half shrug and a cold stare. I didn't say a word. I just walked home holding Toby against my chest. But I wasn't done. I bought a motion-activated camera the same day and pointed it right at the path between my house and his garage. I wanted proof. Something told me this wasn't a one-time thing. And I was right. 3 days after I installed the camera, I caught him on video. It was early morning, just after sunrise. Toby was out on the porch, sitting like he always did. Carl came out, walked down his driveway, then stopped. He looked directly at my porch, at Toby. Then he pulled something out of his pocket. It was a squirt bottle. He sprayed Toby right in the face from across the property line. Toby jumped and ran under the porch. Carl just stood there, completely still, watching. That wasn't it. Later that day, I reviewed the footage again and saw something else. A few nights earlier, before I even suspected anything, Carl had walked out of his garage, reached over the low fence between our yards, and tossed something onto my porch. I hadn't noticed it at the time, but now, seeing it on video, I zoomed in. It was raw meat. I checked my security footage from inside the house. Sure enough, a few hours later, Toby sniffed at it but didn't eat it. He'd been trained never to eat anything outside his bowl. It could have been poison. It could have been bait. It could have been anything. I took everything. The video, the timeline, the animal control report, and I called a lawyer. This wasn't about neighborhood drama anymore. This was animal cruelty and stalking. The lawyer looked at the videos, the timestamps, the report. He didn't hesitate. We can file for a protection order under cruelty statutes, he said. And if you want, we can escalate it to harassment. This isn't petty. This is dangerous behavior. I nodded. We filed. The process took a few weeks. I kept to myself. Carl didn't say a word, but he must have sensed something was coming because he stopped coming outside as much. His blinds stayed closed. His mail sat for days. Then the day came. The court officer came with the letter. I watched from my porch. Carl opened his garage like he always did, routine, calm, and there she was. A uniformed court officer standing by the driveway. She handed him the envelope and said, "You've been served." He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just stood there, jaw tight, fists clenched. He read the letter right there in the driveway. Then he looked up at my house. He stared. I stared back. There was no smile on my face. No gloating. Just years of quiet anger rising to the surface. Not just for what he did to Toby, but for how many times he made everyone on this street feel unwelcome, unsafe. He turned and walked back inside. Left the garage wide open. That was 3 weeks ago. But it didn't end there. After the court order, Carl stopped making eye contact. But he didn't stop watching. He'd sit behind his living room window, the blinds bent open just enough to peek through. Sometimes I'd be walking Toby on a leash out front, and I'd feel it. That pressure. The stare. I never caught him on camera again, but I didn't need to. The energy shifted. Then, the anonymous letters started. Just plain white envelopes, no return address, dropped in my mailbox or under my door. I got 3 of them over the course of a month. Each one typed in the same font, no signature. The first one said, "Keep your cat indoors, or next time won't end as well." The second said, "People like you don't belong in this neighborhood." The third one just had one word, "Enough." I reported each one. The officer said unless I caught him delivering them, they couldn't prove it. But I knew. The tone, the timing, the boldness, it all screamed Carl. I could have moved.
Part of me wanted to.
But that would have been letting him win. So I did something else. I talked to the neighborhood. I showed the footage to Lisa and Mike and Donna. I told them everything. They were shocked, not just by what Carl did, but by how long I kept it to myself. I guess I didn't want to be seen as the woman making a fuss. But once they knew, they started paying attention too. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. Mike's son had his bike tires slashed in their driveway a few months back. Lisa once caught Carl photographing her license plate. Donna said he threatened her dog for barking too loud. Nobody had ever reported him because nobody had ever connected the dots. Until now. We came together. Started logging incidents. Dates, times, photos, videos. Nothing dramatic, just a steady drip of small cruelties. And one of us, not me, sent it all to the HOA board. Now here's the thing. Carl had joined the HOA committee quietly when he moved in. No one really knew what he did there. But after the letters and footage and reports came in, they called an emergency meeting. The board president knocked on my door to ask if I'd be willing to speak.
I did.
That night, I sat in a folding chair in the church basement and read the letters out loud. Showed the videos. Explained how I found Toby in that dark garage.
People gasped.
One woman cried. Carl didn't show up. The next week, the HOA issued him a formal warning for harassment and violation of community rules. They can't force him out, but they fined him. And they made it public. And just like that, the whole neighborhood stopped pretending. People who used to avoid him now walked on the other side of the street. His Amazon packages started disappearing off his porch. One of the older kids egged his mailbox. Someone else poured sugar in his front flower beds.
I didn't do any of that.
I didn't have to. Carl isolated himself, boarded up his windows, left notes on his own door saying, "Do not knock." He made this street miserable for months, maybe years. Now it was turning on him. But one night, I found something on my porch again, and this time, it wasn't from Carl. It was a plain manila envelope. No name, no return address, just sealed and taped to my front door. For a second, I thought maybe Carl had broken the silence again. My stomach dropped. I stood on the porch, staring at it. I didn't touch it right away. Then I noticed something odd. The tape wasn't the kind Carl had used on the previous letters. It was blue painter's tape. He always used clear. I peeled it off and opened the envelope inside my living room with gloves on. I was that paranoid by now. It was a stack of printed emails. Real ones. You could tell they were screen captures from someone's inbox. Subject lines, timestamps, full names. I sat on the couch and read every single one. They were between Carl and someone on the HOA board. They'd been emailing back and forth for months, talking about trouble neighbors and code violations and removing problem elements.
They talked about me.
By name. One message said, "I took care of the cat. Maybe now she'll stop playing victim." Another one said, "Keep your head down. We're not doing anything illegal." The last one, dated a week before I filed the court order, said, "She won't be a problem once we lean on her enough." People like that eventually move out. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Carl wasn't just acting alone. He had someone on the HOA backing him. Maybe more than one. I scanned the sender's email address. It belonged to Brian Wexler, a board member I had seen maybe once or twice at community meetings. He always stayed quiet. Middle-aged, clean-cut, never gave me a second glance. Now I had proof he was involved. That envelope, I don't know who sent it. But someone inside their little circle must have had enough. I called my lawyer again. He said it was more than harassment now. This could be conspiracy. You might be dealing with a civil rights issue if they were targeting you based on age or background. I filed a second report, and this time the police took it seriously. There was an internal HOA review. Brian Wexler was removed from the board within a week. Officially, it was for misuse of position, but people knew. The emails got around. Quietly, without drama, but they spread. Carl stopped coming outside at all. People said he started ordering groceries for delivery, kept his lights off most nights, and once, when the trash truck came late, he dragged his bin back inside like someone was watching him. And they were. Not out of revenge, but because everyone finally saw him for what he was, not just a cranky old man, but someone dangerous. Still, none of it felt like closure. Because while Carl disappeared from view, something else was coming. About 2 months after the HOA fallout, I was woken up by my doorbell at 4:43 in the morning. Not the kind of time you forget. I checked the camera before opening the door. It wasn't Carl. It was a police officer. When I answered, he didn't waste time. "There was a call from this address," he said. "We had a hang-up. Came through at 4:36 a.m. Is everything all right in the home?" I blinked at him. "I didn't call," I said. "It was just me and my cat. We were sleeping." He asked to come inside. Checked every room. Radioed in. Eventually confirmed that the call had come from my landline, a phone I rarely use. The receiver was off the hook, just sitting there on the living room rug. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even been in that room. I felt a cold sweep down my back. The officer left after filing a basic report. Said maybe the line was loose. Happens sometimes. I knew it wasn't loose. Someone had been in my house. Nothing was stolen. No windows broken. Nothing moved. Except the phone. I checked my cameras again. Nothing. No alerts, no footage, no motion detected near the doors or windows. I thought maybe I was losing it. Stress, paranoia, it all builds up. But later that week, I found something else. Toby's bed, the little one he sleeps in under the coffee table, had something tucked inside the cushion flap. Another envelope. Smaller this time. Inside, a photo. A black and white printout of me. Sitting in my living room. Reading. Taken from outside. It wasn't dated. No message.
No signature. Just that one shot.
I sat on the floor for over an hour, Toby in my lap, staring at the image. Not scared. Not even angry. Just tired. I realized Carl hadn't stopped. He'd gone deeper. Quieter. He'd found ways around the cameras, around the law, around the paper trail. The man was unraveling. And somehow, I was still the center of it. So I made a choice. Not to run. Not to retaliate. But to document everything. I started a private folder. Labeled every photo, every envelope, every incident. I recorded daily video logs. Not for social media, for court. For evidence. For me. And maybe one day, for someone else, because I'm not the first person he's tried to scare. And I'm not going to be the last. Sometimes I ask myself if I should have just let it go when I found Toby in that garage. If maybe walking away would have been easier. But then I remember the look on his face. The way he trembled, too weak to even purr. And I remember Carl standing there like it was nothing. Like my cat's life didn't matter. That's when I knew it wasn't about a fence line or a grudge. It was about the kind of silence that lets people like him keep doing what they do. And I won't be quiet anymore, even if no one else is listening.